everyone to our April 7th Wings for Widows Community Zoom call. I hope you had a glorious holiday weekend just passed. Here in Minnesota, it was unprecedented weather, a summery day, and a beautiful opportunity to take advantage of being outside. So really appreciate your taking this lovely evening away from whatever you were doing and joining us. So we're very thankful for your participation. I'm Leanne Lorian. If you don't know me, I'm one of the many volunteers that makes this wonderful organization work. And our purpose at Wings for Widows is to provide financial coaching and education for new widows to help them achieve financial wellness after the loss of a loved one. And we do really want to be a one-stop resource for you. We want you to know that you're not alone in this journey. Please know that we have people here who care about you and want to hear your story and help you to write the next chapter. Please reach out to us and let others know about Wings for Widows because we have many valuable resources to share. Tonight, I want to start by shining a spotlight on some spring enrichment classes that will be starting later in April and in early May. We've just opened up enrollment for these classes, and they range from 4 to 6 weeks in length. And they're just one night a week for 1 hour. The first one that starts on April 26th is being taught by our own director, Chris Bentley, and it is called Legacy Planning. And he has written a book, actually it's a workbook that you'll be going through step by step. You can ask all the questions and work through this workbook together with a group of people. And it's a great opportunity to share information and ask a lot of questions and actually do the thing you intend to do, and that is plan for your own end of life. The other class that I'll have Denice tell you a little bit more about later is called Consumer Protection, and that is being taught by Denice Gibson, who will be speaking in a few minutes. It starts on May 2nd. And then the third class we're offering is another repeat of our class called Grief Explorations. And that is taught by Jenny Schrodel, who is the chaplain and director of grief ministries for Presbyterian Homes here in the Twin Cities. That class starts on May 13th. So if you are interested in any of those, I'd suggest you go to our website, wingsforwidows.org, go to events and check out the classes. They'll give you the dates and more specific information. You can sign up right there. Tonight we have a wonderful lineup of speakers. I want to remind you that our call lasts about an hour. Please keep your mute button on and use the chat icon down at the bottom of your screen if you want to ask questions. And I will field those questions as we have time at the end of each speaker's presentation. We usually get these calls edited and posted to YouTube within a week or 2 weeks after the call. So if you want to repeat or catch up on one that you missed, you can go there and just key in Wings for Widows and it'll pop up our video selection. You might find topics there you didn't know we addressed, but might be very helpful to you. Now, let me introduce, first of all, Denice Gibson of Leg Up Life Skills. When Denice relocated to Minnesota from the East Coast, she almost immediately offered her services to our widowed community with her unique blend of practical tips and helpful resources. Her classes have helped those of us who have never had to handle all the details of home and personal business alone. We all have a natural tendency to avoid change, but when unanticipated change jumps on us, we all need help. One of the phrases that I took from her website that I thought was very good is thought determines what you want, action determines what you get. So Denice is here tonight to help us take action in an important area of life. Thanks, Denice, and welcome.
Thank you for the introduction.
You're welcome.
I'd like to share my screen now if I could. So we're going to talk tonight about consumer safety. We're going to talk about fraud and internet vulnerability. And I am the host now. Okay, so I can do this, and ta-da! Can you see it? Mm-hmm. Great. That's great. So like Leanne was saying, taking action is the important part. And to take action, of course, you have to have a plan. So I love this quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. It takes as much energy to wish as it does to plan, which is so true. But finding the true information and having the willingness to verify information before you take action will protect you from fraud. I have another person on the call tonight. Her name is Peggy. She too is a widow, and she has a story that she's going to share with us in just a few minutes when I get to that point. I'm excited to have Peggy here tonight too to speak to you about fraud. She is a fraud fighter as well as myself for AARP. And so some of this information is from our federal government, from consumer protection and other agencies, as well as AARP. So you may want to have your phone ready or a camera ready, or do a screen capture for some of the information I'll show you tonight, because we're going to go fairly quickly. But like Leanne said, I am doing a consumer protection course that starts in May. So if you go to the website, that consumer protection course is going to talk more in depth about protecting bank accounts, credit cards, consumer protection while you're shopping. Just has a lot of information on it. It's a 4-week course. So I hope you'll join me in May also. So the first thing you need to do to protect yourself is take the time and the mental energy, which we all know is sometimes hard to do. Drink water, take breaks. The brain is a muscle and it uses up a lot of energy, but slow it down a little bit before you take action and be a critical thinker. To be a critical thinker, you need to suspend your judgment. So don't make a decision right away. Look for assumptions. Sometimes you assume that it's a reputable source, or you assume that they're looking for your best interest. So look for your assumptions. Seek collaborative information. Google it. See if there's other places that will tell you the same thing, that this is reputable or a good idea or it really works. Find current information. So check how old it is. Check your source to define their intentions, and we'll go over that a little bit more about the internet. Sometimes the source can be not what you expect. It could be a person who has not good intentions and wants to get personal information from you. And then compare a source with other reputable sources. So call them. Do you know about so-and-so? Is this really a legitimate business, or are they as good as they say? So a simple thing that you can do is look at the address. If you look at the address and you see a lock like Wings for Widows website, that means it is a secure website. This one actually on my Apple will tell me it's not secure, but it will not have this lock if it's not a secure website. If someone has just opened it up to try to get you to troll, to try to get you to come onto their website. It will also have an S after the HTTP. S is for secure. The unsecure websites will have HTTP, no S. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So if you can look for that S, or make sure if you have an Apple, I don't know about other computers, to see that lock, then you know you're on a reputable site. Passwords. So a lot of people talk about passwords. I don't know why my computer is now acting funny on me. Okay. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you use a symbol, lowercase, uppercase. And then they're saying now that the best way to do this is to have it be a term. And so fight fraud for me would be an excellent password. And then I've substitute numbers for letters often, which makes it an easier way for me to see it and make sure that it's the right password. I also use a app that keeps my passwords and it keeps them safe. Mine's called LastPass, but there are other apps that can keep your passwords safe. Don't use passwords across different websites or devices. Each of them should be unique. And you should write down your passwords. I know a lot of people out there say, don't write them down anywhere. If it's in your home, it's safe. And if you're leaving your home and you want to put it in a safe hiding place, that's great. But you should keep a book with your passwords. It should also include account information, phone numbers. And that way you can tell other members of your family where that book exists. And if let's say you're in the Bahamas having a wonderful vacation and something happens and you need somebody to correct something or pay something or do something for you, you can tell them to go into your home where your book is, and they can go ahead and access all your information and straighten it out for you. Phishing. Peggy and I know a lot about phishing. It's just a scam carried out through emails or websites. That's what they call phishing is. If the address or subject line or even the contents have unusual spelling, often if it's a phishing thing, they'll have really poor grammar. And the most important thing is don't click on it. Don't open it. If you see the email, you can click on the email to read the email. But then if there's any hyperlinks or click here or respond, even on the phone, respond with a 1. Or if you don't want to receive these phone calls anymore, push 3 for no. Don't push 3 because that isn't what's going to happen. Just don't click on it if it looks unusual or it sounds wrong. If the link is not a company you recognize, or there's a picture or video for someone you don't know, then obviously don't click on it. If the offer sounds too good to be true, it is, of course. That's an old one. And if the contents have personal information about you or your finances and asks you to respond or take action, can you confirm this? We are the IRS. We are your bank. We want to sell you additional insurance for your car or something like that. And they may have like the last 4 digits of your social security number. So you might assume that they're a viable company or they are really trying to help you, but they can find that information in other places and they're looking for more information, a more complete profile. Sometimes they use it themselves and sometimes they sell that information. So don't take action, don't open it, don't click on it, contact them directly, contact the company they're posing to be directly. So now I'd like Peggy to tell us a little bit about her story, and she had a close call with a scammer. Peg, would you like to share your story with us?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm Peggy Harry, and I'm going to start with kind of the beginning of how I got involved with fraud. My mother in 2010 was scammed for $47,000 through phone calls, Jamaica, in 10 days' time. And she maxed out 2 credit cards. They told her exactly what to do. what banks to go to and the whole bit. And so she lived on a small Social Security and a small pension. And anyway, she did have to file bankruptcy. It was a horrid, horrid thing that our family had to go through. And as I processed that, I didn't know a lot about fraud up until that time, but I read everything I could. And as I processed that, there was something that I really wanted to help other people. And 2 years into that, I got an email, and AARP was looking for a speaker to present a story. They were looking for a story at a Capitol hearing for the Senate and the representatives, because they had a bill that they were trying to get through for two years, and they hadn't been able to do it. And so they were looking for a story to give to these committees, and also do a press conference. So I had written to, I had talked to my representative here in Duluth, and she had given me a name of this Joel Adkins, who was from the city, that was interested in fraud. So I wrote him a letter and gave him my mother's story, and I never heard from him. And I thought, well, that's not a big deal because he's not in my district. Anyway, so when I said, yes, I have this story, I just copied and let AARP download my letter, and they got right back to me, can you come and do this? And I just jumped at it because I thought this was my chance. Now, I've never done anything like that in my life before, but I took the chance and I did it. And the bill that year went through. And so out of that came a lot of things that Minnesota is doing for fraud that other states aren't really doing as much as we are doing. We're doing a lot. And they funded positions at the Department of Commerce and a couple other state organizations. And then ARP got together a fraud fighters team. And I was one of the first ones to come on board with that. And I've done a lot with giving presentations and stuff. So I know fraud and I know scams, okay? Fast forward to I gotta get the years right now, to 2019. My husband died in April, and he had been for 2.5 years. I was a caregiver, and he had been diagnosed with respiratory onset ALS, and it's very rare, this type of ALS, and it has to do with he could not get rid of his carbon dioxide, so he had to be on these type of these machines to help him breathe and stuff. And so during that time, I was his main caregiver, and so I really didn't have a lot of time to be checking out the house, and the things he did I had to take on, and I was a busy person. And that summer after he died, I noticed that there was a stain in the top of my garage ceiling. And so I live in a homeowners association. And so I went to the chairman and told him, I think I have mold on my ceiling, because there was little black spots. And they said, well, you've got water coming in then. And I didn't know what to do. I know nothing about the trade of building. Nothing. And so they said, well, you call the garage door people and they'll come out, So I did, and they put new flaps on the bottom and the sides, and I thought that was fine, and I paid the bill. And then during the winter, it grew as the spring came. The stains got larger and the mold was more. And so I again contacted the homeowners association. And I looked in our book of the homeowners, and it says anything outside, such as roofs, siding, and all that, is the responsibility of the homeowners association. So anyway, to make a long story short, they kind of dragged their feet. I called my insurance. My insurance didn't cover it, unknown to me, because it was the responsibility of the homeowners association if it was coming from outside. I looked on the internet and Googled you know, mold on garage ceiling. And the first thing they said is check for leak. And so I had 8 contractors here. The first 4 couldn't find the leak, the first 3. And 2 of the first 3, the homeowners people or the chairman had those come in. And then the third one was a mold guy. And he seemed to know a lot about mold. And my insurance did recommend him. So, you know, he gave me an estimate. And then the 4th guy came and found the leak. And then I had 4 more to back it up because my homeowners didn't want to believe it was a leak. So as I'm going through all of this, knowing that mold, looking up mold and finding out that some molds are dangerous and you know, you can have breathing issues. My vulnerability kicked in. I just become a widow. Did this kill my husband? Am I at risk? You know, fear just hit me. And so I did get the mold guy in here and he tested everything and it was only in the garage, but that was an $850 bill. So anyway, as we proceeded with the garage, the homeowners board would not accept that it was coming from the outside. And as I looked on my estimates, the mold guy that I was going to get, because he knew mold, and that was my fear, I got an estimate. It was $28,000. Now, my home insurance wasn't going to pay this, but my mind was saying this is coming from the outside and it's going to be covered by, you know, the homeowner's insurance or the condominiums or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, as I started to look at this bill, I started to question things, and I'm doing this all alone. And I had a $1,750 charge for a building permit. And I thought, geez, is that what they cost? So I called up my local building inspector in Hermantown here, and I asked, how much does a building inspection cost permit for this? And I told him what needed to be done. He said, they're free. And I told him I was a new widow. I don't know a lot about this. And he goes, would you like me to come over? And I said, if you want to. He came over and this was not part of his job. And he did tell me, he said, there are more women that get scammed by contractors, you know, especially if they're, you know, they've just lost a husband and, you know, they have the money to pay for this. And he said, you haven't signed a contract, have you? And I said, yes, I have. And I put $3,000 on it. And my mind, I must have had brain fog really bad because I wasn't even thinking. And he said, when did you do that? And I told him, and I had 13 hours to cancel it with the 72-hour, you know, you could cancel. So I did end up canceling it and I got out of it. But I guess my point in this is, if you're going into something like this after a loss, and you know, any kind of loss, I guess, but especially grief loss, have somebody help you. I had to give the whole board, 7 people, which were 3 women and 4 men, came over and had to look at this thing. They were sick and, you know, they didn't see anything wrong. And I had a man tell me, well, you should have never done this without a man here. Well, my hair stood on end. I mean, I just said, wait a minute here, you know. And I mean, I gave him my wherefore, and my husband used to be on the board, and he would have been dealing with this if he was alive, you know. And I told him that. But the long story or the short story of this is, know what your insurance covers. I did not realize about and it was a national insurance company. I did change that eventually. I got a different one because some of them don't cover stuff if you're in a condo unit, that other, know that, and kind of have somebody that you can ask questions for. If it wasn't for that home inspector, I mean, I would have been out a lot of money. So knowing scams, knowing fraud, and really, being attuned to money and being attuned to how I can find information, I still almost stepped in a nightmare.
Thank you, Peggy. That's a perfect story. It will make all of us, when it happens to us, or when it almost happens to us, feel better and not feel like, we were duped without having any intelligence. It happens to the most trained, the most experienced people. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for sharing. So now let's talk about, you were scammed, now what? So there are things you can do. You can go to the company you're dealing with, call them directly and ask them about a message that you received or about the contract, or, find the details like Peggy is saying. Having a second person look over the contract that you can trust is a great idea. If you are scammed or your identity's been stolen or whatever's happening, you do need to call the police and file a report. Even if it's going through your insurance or your HOA or whatever, call the police, say it's a non-emergency, and file a report. That's an important thing to do. Call your bank or credit card company and file a complaint. They will walk you through what their policies are to place a hold or issue a new card or whatever once you tell them the story. Call your insurance company and ask them if they have identity theft protection. It's really inexpensive. I think I pay $3 a month. I have $100,000 worth of legal aid if it should happen to me. So add that to your insurance if it's available, or find it. Sometimes you can actually buy it through your bank. So try to find identity theft protection insurance, and it should be inexpensive. There are scammers trying to sell you that for a lot of money. So do call around. Report them to the Federal Trade Commission. They are very active in trying to catch these people, and the more reports they get, the more they can combine that and actually find them. They have a complaint assistant on their website. It's so easy, and it's really important that we catch these criminals. And if they claim to be the IRS, which is an active one right now, you can report that to the IRS. They call it phishing at irs.gov, but you can go onto the IRS's website and they'll direct you right to where you can report fraud. So I'm asking to please be proactive in trying to help us cut down on these things. And ARP is very active in actually catching these thieves too. They work with the FBI, right, Peggy? They work with the FBI, they work with banks, they work with consumer protection. It's a big team, and they do catch a lot of these people. If you find someone is using your personal and financial information without your permission, and even in Peggy's case, I'm sure she documented all these phone calls, wrote it down, the date, what was, see, look at, she's nodding her head. Yeah, make sure you document all these incidences. Even if you could take the time, and every time you get that phone call about issuing protection for your car repairs or whatever, if you write it down and you find some consistent phone numbers or something, that would be a great thing to report. You can always contact your local police. They do take note, and they do have a way to follow up with another agency. I already talked about insurance company. There is a credit reporting, there are 3 actually, credit reporting agencies, and you can notify them. You can put a freeze on your credit account so that they won't issue any credit cards, won't issue any credit unless you contact them again and unfreeze it. And we get into more details about that in the class if you want to take the class. There are state and federal agencies that prosecute fraud. You can go onto the Minnesota website and just put in fraud, and it'll bring you right to it. Credit institutions and banks, of course, and log all phone conversations, including the names you spoke to. So, and then
I don't want to interrupt, but at the same time, I want to allow time for Mary McCoy, our second speaker.
Yeah, this is the last slide.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
So here's some resources, the FTC. And if you look at these real quick, you'll see that one of these resources is not an actual page, right? There's an HTTP without the S. And if you look at it, their actual website is www.fraud.org, not .com or not .gov. So watch for those little details. Take your time and watch for details, and you'll be doing a lot to protect yourself. Thanks for the time. I'm excited to hear what Mary has to teach us.
Thanks, Denise. Really appreciate it. I really want to encourage you to take this class. If you have not done coaching with Wings for Widows, that is also something we cover in our one-to-one coaching. So protecting yourself is one of the very first things we do with our clients when they come on board with our coaches. We go right to your credit score and freeze your credit accounts. That's one of the very first things we do. So I just want to make you aware that that guidance that Denise gave you is excellent, and you can take that class and learn a lot more about it. I had a similar thing happen, well, not that big of a deal, but somebody, after my husband died, about 3 months after, somebody bought over like $3,000 worth of furniture in Miami using his business credit card that I had canceled. So just so you know, I mean, it's amazing. If I always say, if those people could turn their smarts to doing good instead of doing evil, they'd be just as far ahead. But you know, they somehow figured out how to get his number and charge stuff on a credit card. Of course, I was able to dispute it and got that money back, but it gave me a wake-up call. All right, I want to turn our attention now to a completely different topic. One of the loveliest persons you'll ever meet is Mary McCoy. She is coming to share a little bit about her experiences as a hospice nurse. Mary is an RN. She's certified in hospice and palliative care and in public health nursing. She's been a nurse for 30 years, working in pediatrics, public health, and school nurse. Also, her last several years in hospice and home care. She is married to Pat and has three she says mostly adult children. We all know what that means. And she's excited to be a new empty nester. Her topic is dispelling the myths of hospice, and her hope is to give you a clear picture of what hospice truly encompasses and get us all to a place of learning how to plan our best end of the race and to prepare well for that season of life ourselves and for our loved ones. So welcome, Mary, and thank you very much for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you, Leanne, for having me. I really appreciate the invitation, and I really appreciate all of you joining us and allowing me into this really personal and sacred time in your life. I'm going to talk a little bit mostly about hospice, and then just a little bit about the difference of what palliative care is. But I just want you to know that the most meaningful part of my job in hospice is being allowed to become part of families at a time when they're in great need, needing support, needing education, and needing to understand that they can do what they think they can't do. It's very much a privilege. So I appreciate your having me, and I appreciate the families that allow us in. So to jump right into the hospice program, the primary goal of hospice is to come alongside families, not just the patient, but the entire family, to meet their needs, to support them in their medical needs, their physical, their emotional, and their spiritual well-being. And I always tell families that our primary goal is to honor your wishes, and that is the wishes of the patient and the family. And sometimes those are different. Sometimes the patient may have very different foresight on what they're going to go through, and they would like to see things differently than the family is ready for. So again, our goal is to try to manage the goals and expectations of everyone involved. Hospice is a very fluid program. It's very individualized, and so it encompasses just an enormous amount of information that we share with patients along the way. But tonight, I'm just going to kind of give you an overview. And then I created a PowerPoint program that goes into a whole lot more detail of what hospice is and what all those myths that people believe hospice is, countered by the truth of what it really is. So we'll just do just a brief summary of that tonight. But if you would like that PowerPoint, Leanne has that and she can send that out to you. There's no copyright on it or anything. It's just a program we put together to help educate folks. So I want to help you understand that the importance of aftercare as I address you as a group. You know this well. You know that after a person passes away, a lot of things happen that you maybe expect some, but a lot of things that you don't expect. And if you know anybody that's been through hospice care with a loved one, you know the value of that. But if you haven't, there are a whole lot of pieces that are very supportive for families before, during, and after. So I'd like to share with you just a brief description of what our hospice services are. All hospices across the country that are Medicare providers have certain things that they have to have in place in order to function. So after qualifying for hospice, which just means that two doctors have to agree that if a person's disease process were to go on the trajectory that they expect, that they would not be surprised to see them pass away within 6 months. That's what it takes to qualify for hospice. And in that, there's a lot more detail about different disease processes. But once a person qualifies, they come into hospice by a nurse and social worker coming to the home. The home can be anywhere where the patient is. It can be a private home, it can be an apartment, assisted living, skilled nursing facility, nursing home. It can be a prison, it can be a shelter, it can be wherever a person is. And hospice also can follow people when they need to move out of those situations and help plan for a plan B in case that primary goal is not something that's working out for a family. So on the team that comes around a family at that time, it's required that there be a hospice doctor, an RN, and a medical social worker. Those people will see a family on different types of schedules. Typically, a nurse will see a family 1 to 3 times a week on average. But as a person is closer to the end, it can be daily if needed. So again, it's very fluid. It depends on the needs of the patient, the family, what's going on at the time, how symptoms are being managed. A social worker is involved to help with emotional support. And again, that plan B of how we change as a patient's needs change. They typically will see a family a couple of times a month. Sometimes families want very little involvement. They don't want a lot of people in their home. Those two folks have to be involved, but they can be involved minimally and do a lot of phone work as well instead of making visits to the home. But those things change along the journey, and we change right along with it. Then there are all kinds of extra services that are voluntary to take or not take. They're wonderful supportive services, but not all families want that. So some of those would be a home health aide that can come in and provide personal cares, bathing, showering, hair washing, some light housekeeping duties. We have chaplains who provide spiritual care and support, conversation, emotional support. There are music therapists who are just fabulously talented people. They can come in and they play live music. Of course, what their talents are varies on what they play. They can bring a guitar, a keyboard, all kinds of different instruments, and of course, voice. And they're wonderful for providing just trips down memory lane, a lot of peace, comfort, relieving of anxiety, helping people talk through things that they hadn't thought of for years. We have massage therapists who obviously deal with the physical aspects of comfort. It's not a massage like you go to a massage place and have to take off clothes and lay on a table. They can provide massage in certain areas and strictly for comfort, light touch massage. It's not the deep tissue kind of massage. All of those kind of things are optional. And there are other different hospices provide different types of service. So as you look into those things, you need to ask questions of what services are available that might fit your family better. The hospice is always very comfort focused. It comes at a time when families and patients are not able to seek curative care anymore, or they're choosing not to seek curative care due to what it's done to their body. They don't want to be hospitalized anymore. They don't want to go through all those things. Or sometimes they have gone through all those things and they're not helping and might actually be making things worse. And so family decides it might be time to start having hospice conversations. So again, we focus on comfort and not cure. The team that manages all your needs provides whatever you might need in the home to care for that person, including equipment, which might be walkers, wheelchairs, oxygen, hospital beds, lifts when a person can't walk anymore, adaptive things for the bathroom, all kinds of equipment that allow a family to keep a person at home where they want to be. We also provide medications that are related to the person's terminal diagnosis and pay for those, along with anything that is related to symptom management. So things like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, pain, shortness of breath, any kind of medications we put in along the way are all covered. And depending on the hospice, they're usually delivered right out to the family's home, so they don't have to be going out to get those as well. Anything that is not covered by hospice would be things like, for instance, if you had been diabetic for years, it was, prior to the terminal diagnosis, those things are still paid for in the same way that they used to be. And the family will still take care of getting those things on their own. But hospice, the nurse and physician involved are the experts in symptom management. They are required to have a 24-hour nurse line, and the doctor is available through that as well, to manage symptoms and any problems that might come up 24/7, 365. And I always tell people, if there's ever a time that you wonder, should I call hospice? The answer is yes, you absolutely should, because we don't want people to sit on questions and be uncomfortable or afraid or worried about waking somebody up in the middle of the night. That's what we're there for. And so if we can make a visit that will save a hospitalization or save a lot of trauma to a patient or family, that's what we want to do. And they also become your new 911. So if there's a fall or if there's a symptom that's not being well managed at home, hospice can help with getting a person into the hospital without having to go through the ER and help manage the transportation and the admission. And really the goal when we hospitalize a hospice patient is to get their symptoms under control, get them feeling good and well managed, with the goal of bringing them back home or wherever the place is that they are going to need to be, even if that means a different level of care. Our goal is to really help with making all that possible to the best quality of life we can manage for you. So the teams work with families on a lot of things, with emotional help, with spiritual help, with anticipatory grief, helping families understand what's coming down the line and how to deal with those, helping with funeral planning, and helping the family after the patient passes. We have bereavement services that are in place for up to 13 months after a loved one passes. The bereavement care that comes through a hospice is it's put in place to help identify what a person's needs are and help get them services as they go along the journey. So it might include an initial phone call a couple of weeks after a person passes. And that is to assess how the loved ones are doing, adults and children, and to help decide what kind of things they might need going forward. Some families really, they've done a lot of anticipatory grief and they don't want a lot of intervention afterwards, but they might prefer just a supportive phone call. Some people need ongoing help. Some people want face-to-face visits. Some people just want a lot of information. But we connect folks with a lot of community service as well, such as support groups through their church or community, things like Wings for Widows that provide a lot of extra services that folks might not even know they need. So that's our goal, is to really get them connected where they need to be to function well and to experience their grief ongoing, even past the time that hospice is involved. Some of the things I want to touch on just quickly are some of those myths of hospice. Again, all that's in the PowerPoint, so I'm not going to reiterate all of it, but just a few things. One of the myths is that hospice comes on to hasten death or prolong life at times when people don't want that. That is a myth. Hospice is not there to hasten death. We are there strictly for comfort and symptom management, to give people the best quality of life that they can all the way to the end, no matter how long that is. It is not only for elderly people. A lot of people think that in hospice. It is true that pediatric hospice is oftentimes separate from adult hospice, and that is usually because children are managed by a pediatric hospital, which have their own hospices. But hospice covers care from birth to life on the whole lifespan. Another one that is very, very common is that hospice is depressing. And a lot of people avoid going on hospice for that reason. And I would love to find ways to turn that around and help people see what hospice really is. But it is quite the opposite. It's to come in and help create meaning for families and to work on healing the spiritual realm of what people are going through and provide comfort, to share stories and to help people leave a legacy. We have volunteers that can come in, and oftentimes they'll sit with a patient and help write a letter that the patient would like read at their funeral, or to write letters of apology to people that they've had fractured relationships with, to give them peace at the end of life and live well to the end. With the music therapy and the medical social workers that come in to provide extra support, there can be a lot of times of laughter and tears and joy and experiencing pain, to help people heal from things that have happened earlier in life. So our goal really is to guide along the journey and to lessen all of those things that people find depressing and to bring them up and bring quality and joy. It's for people at all levels of care, even those who look like they may need intensive care. There are a lot of things we can do in the home as well. It is a myth that hospice comes in and takes over all of your medications, takes over all the decision-making. That the truth of the matter is that when hospice comes in, our goal is to honor your wishes, and you, the patient and the family, are the only decision makers in the process. We're there to help educate, share information, share resources, and help you make decisions that's best for your loved one and your family. And if that means revoking from hospice and signing off for a period, say there's a new medication that comes out that a patient wants to try to see if it helps, they sign off of hospice, they go and attempt the curative care And if that works, then that's awesome. And they get much more quality time. That's great. But they can come back onto hospice at any time, and there is no ending to when a patient has to go off of hospice. We do often see patients do better on hospice when their symptoms and their emotions and their situations are managed well. And they sign off, we call it graduating from hospice. And they live well until they start having a decline, and they can come right back on. So again, it's just a very fluid program that meets very individual needs. It is a myth that pain is always a part of the dying process. It can be, of course, but our expertise is in symptom management, and pain and shortness of breath type control is our primary goal, to help people stay comfortable. Another myth is that hospice care is expensive. Hospice care paid by Medicare is covered on 100%. Our services are a visiting service. So all of our people that come in are in for half hour to 2 hours, depending on what the needs are. They do not cover the long periods of service, but that part would be private pay. We don't provide that type of service, but we do help families find that service and give referrals and help get that into place for them. That piece is private pay. If a person is not Medicare age, most managed care and private care insurance companies cover hospice care in the same way that Medicare does. There may be some slight differences, and we help you figure out what that is before you begin. But typically they have a very similar program to the Medicare hospice. The difference between hospice and palliative care, just quickly, is that palliative care can come on to a patient service team prior to coming on to hospice. So say a person is experiencing COPD or congestive heart failure, Parkinson's, cancer. As they're going through that journey and seeking curative care, palliative care doctors and teams can come on board to help with quality of life and symptom management, along with that curative team of people. They're also there to help folks understand when things aren't working in a curative manner anymore, things aren't making you better, there's more hospitalizations, and help understand when it might be time to start having the change over to hospice. And at that point, when a person changes over to hospice, then hospice becomes the palliative care team and takes over that role. So it's kind of just a fluid program that morphs palliative care into hospice care. And so, as you all know very well, when a person passes, this triggers all kinds of things that can be expected or unexpected in your life. Roles can change, family roles, the way people deal with each other, things that need to be managed. And again, we like to direct you to community services such as Wings for Widows, such as support groups. But our goal is really to encourage healthy expression of grief, help you along the way with how to reconnect in a new way with your family and with society, in a way that you're not used to, and be alongside you, and move forward in ways that are productive and helpful for you. Loss is obviously never easy, but we want you to know that we're here for you to lean on. And it also causes us to all be in a place of thinking forward for what's going to happen in our lives. And so this information, again, in the PowerPoint is much more detailed, lots more resources available. But the goal really is to help get you talking and having conversations about advanced care planning for yourself, so that when all of our time comes to an end, that our children or whoever is in our sphere of influence that's going to be taking care of our needs knows what we want, and that we ourselves have explored it to an extent that we know exactly what to tell others, our desires, and get that into writing. So I know Wings helps with that. All the hospice programs help with that. The hospitals, the clinics, all can help with that. So we encourage you to seek that out and find the resources available. In the sake of time, I will point you again to the PowerPoint. I appreciate your having me. If you have questions, please feel free to raise them.
Does anybody have questions? Oh, Denise says, I learned a lot. And you know what? I learned a lot, even though I don't have anyone in hospice right now. I will be taking care of my mother-in-law in my home in May. And it made me think, and she's 95 and failing. And it made me think I'm going to play big band music for her, because that just brings back all the memories from when she was in college, and it'll just be delightful for her. So thank you for that
You're welcome.
reminder, and really, really helpful information. I will, if it's okay with you, Mary, I will send this out, but I also think I might just put it as a resource on our website.
Sure.
Yeah, if that's okay. Very helpful. I know that hospice is maybe not unfamiliar. Maybe you've had experiences with it. Both of my parents were in hospice care at the end of their lives, and it was exactly as Mary said, much more the peaceful and reconciling time that you would want it to be. So I'm so thankful for people who are called to that work, because it's a special calling. So thank you, Mary, very much for sharing with us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I wanted to mention our next call, which will be April 17th. It's going to be two of our wonderful presenters. The first one will be Maureen Revac, who is actually one of our board members and volunteer with Wings for Widows. She became a widow in her early 40s. Very suddenly, her husband died playing basketball with a group of friends, and she was left to raise her two kids by herself, and has had a career all these years as well. She waited 7 years to address her own grief because she had children to take care of. And she's going to share her experience with a grief group even after that 7-year wait to start dealing with her own grief. And then the other person that will be sharing with us is Melissa Brennan. She's a certified financial planner, and she's going to address 10 financial mistakes that widows make, and just give us a real good 101 on widowhood and tips that specifically apply to us. So I hope that you will join us next time. Just go to our website, check out the events, and we will be happy to see you again. Please stay well, stay safe, and God bless you, and I will see you the next time. Good night.